This podcast is brought to you by a very sleepy boy and the backers at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. Check out that Patreon for early access to podcast, access to the Slack, cool new features, and help us build more and awesome shows. Once again, patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv.
I was trying to save lives, yours and millions in my future, 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 future,
That ought to put that peckerwood in his place.
I'm Jeremy Greer.
And I'm Gary Butterfield.
And this is Days of Future Cast. And we are talking about Season 2 of X-Men, the animated series. How are you today, Gary?
I'm doing pretty well. It's a snow day in Portland. It doesn't snow often here. But last week it snowed and yesterday it snowed. And the city likes to flip out in a real big bad way.
People will be really interested to hear that and when this episode comes out in February.
Yes, it is
in December.
Yeah. To immediately date it, snow in December, winter cold. All these things are true.
This is going to be pretty funny because Duckfeed is currently like in a scramble to get a bunch of episodes recorded to kind of lighten their load during the holidays, and like there's a lot of like time shifting going on. It's really funny.
I am, I'm surprised that the weather has not actually interfered with my internet, which I was kind of expecting to have my net denied. But net achieved. I got net. It worked.
Excellent.
So doing all right. Just sitting around in my bathrobe, drinking a cup of coffee. I'm real warm and cozy. I got my heater going.
Good,
hopefully it's not coming through on the mic. Everything's good.
It's like 70 degrees here, so it's feeling great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm very close to about 2.5 weeks of vacation, where we have some family coming in for Christmas. We're cleaning up the house, we're redecorating, we're doing all kinds of stuff. So it's
sure.
And then I'm recording like 8 podcasts a day before I finish out this week. So yay!
Yep, finishing out this week, finishing out the year. Pod strong, creating content.
Got to create the
only way we're gonna survive 2017 is if we have enough content stores.
If you don't store up enough content in your cheeks, you won't survive the winter.
When we're hunting rats in the sewer and collecting rainwater from our rooftop gardens in a couple years, we'll look back on this waste of effort and cry.
You know, there's a cover of "Where Has All the Content Gone" by Natalie Imbruglia somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Dave Paradise.
Let's talk about some X-Men.
Oh yeah, what did we do last time, Jeremy?
Previously on X-Men.
Previously, the X-Men have faced down Mr. Stentor and the Nasty Boys. They've stopped Scott and Jean's wedding indirectly, fought off a vengeful mind spirit trying to take over Storm, took a trip to Russia, took a trip down to Bayou, and are still looking for Xavier, who has mysteriously disappeared. That pretty much catches us all up on season 2 so far. And man, I am very excited to talk about the next 2 episodes. If it wasn't for an episode that comes later in the season, these 2 episodes would be my favorite episodes so far.
These are very great. Like it's this other than these 2 episodes. So this is a really weird season. We'll talk about that more next season or next episode where we talk about the kind of wrap up. Mm-hmm. But this is the short stories season of the show. Like they came out really strong in the first season with kind of introducing the principles and doing the main theming, and this is like side stories. So that's why we got the bio and stuff. And that's going to continue here with this weird, brief little jaunt to something that feels much more important and ambitious, which is XM207 Time Fugitives, Part 1. Original air date, December 11th, never forget, 1993. It is 3999 AD in New York City, and Nate Summers, also known as Cable, is leading a war against Apocalypse and his forces. But when a time storm appears, Cable discovers that the past is being altered by the mutant known as Bishop, and that these alterations will cause destruction in the mutant race.
And this is once again just another entry in the TV Guide synopsis that kind of spoils a lot of things that the show does not tell you. Like the show goes out of its way to kind of wink and nod that Nate Summers is related to Scott and Jean somehow, but like this just says, okay, yeah, his name is Nate. That never comes up in the episodes.
That's 100% true. Like if that was going to be a spoiler, it has been spoiled. The one thing I do like about this though, and we'll get into it, is like It's a direct sequel to the Bishop episodes from last season. Weirdly enough, not a direct sequel to the Cable episodes from last season. But it's when you think like, oh, you're gonna fuck around with the time stream, nothing's gonna happen. No, shit's gonna happen. And like this is dealing with that kind of causality and the it's a real sci-fi trope, like a time travel trope. But having that show up in this kids cartoon is awesome, I think.
And it's complicated. Like there's a Bishop versus Cable dynamic. The X-Men are kind of weirdly accepting of Bishop, but also weirdly antagonistic towards him. And then we still have our ongoing Friends of Humanity problem. So we've got several different lines of conflict moving between several different characters. And I can't believe they pulled this off at all in a 22-minute TV show that came out in the early 90s. Like, it's just kind of mind-blowing that they actually pulled the story off. And I see why it took them 2 episodes, but man, even, stretch that to 44 minutes, they're doing some work. Writers are putting in some serious work.
Yeah, for 100%. And it's like, not only is it a complicated fight, but we don't really know who to root for, because everybody kind of has a good motivation here, except for the Friends of Humanity.
And this is going to be kind of a running theme in like several of these episodes that are coming up. Like there's the X-Men aren't necessarily the good guys in some cases. Like the X-Men are kind of just pawns on this chessboard of like a much bigger game being played. And I kind of find that fascinating. Like it's going to come up in the Rogue episode we're going to deal with later. Like Rogue's not the hero of that story by any means.
Yeah, very cool. Like this is a good stretch for the most part, with one kind of end episode that like I don't think I dislike it as much as you do, but I think is problematic. But we'll get into these first 2 ones here. Time Fugitives Part 1 and 2. In Part 1, we open up with Cable in the future, 3999 New York, and he is fighting essentially Terminators.
Yeah, like they look like with the melted face off, like just pure metal Terminators. It's pretty funny. Like I love it.
Yeah, fighting robots, and he's leading his crew into the charge. He's saying like, no, we either win or we die. They're like, oh, it's hopeless. It's like, no, this is our last stand. With just kind of a motley crew of mutants that we don't know who they are. One of them kind of looks like Rachel Summers,
and one of them kind of has Colossus arms, but no other Colossus.
But he's not the other guy with Colossus arms that ran really fast.
Yeah, there's a different.
There's always a lighthouse. There's always a guy with just Colossus for arms.
And
that made me think of somebody who had like full bodies of Colossus for arms, like the head was on the shoulder and there was just 2 arms and 2 legs. Like, duh!
Very specifically, Cable's fighting Apocalypse, which is a returning villain. So Apocalypse is there. He's like larger than life and sending these robots against all of these mutants and trying to exterminate the mutants, which has got to be, as a kid watching this, like it has to be like I wonder if it occurred to any children, like, man, that's kind of depressing. Like it's 1993.
Oh, yeah, Apocalypse won.
Yeah, and X-Men are fighting him, and now 2,000 years later, he's still around. That sucks.
Yeah, he wins. Is the depressing part of this, and it's like they don't ever really resolve that to be a happy ending.
Yeah,
he needs to be a force for conflict, which is like part of his whole thing, which means he's kind of right. It's very cool. This kind of like big silly whirlwind comes through, and one thing that Cable has in the comics, it's called Professor, and it's his supercomputer. Here though, it's just a lady computer voice. He's got this Apple Watch where he can ask Siri stuff about what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he thinks Apocalypse is doing. He thinks it's one of Apocalypse's weapons, but it's like, no, this is a time storm. And I love this scene because he's like, what can I do about it? How do I stop it? And they're like, you can't. And it starts like absorbing his people. Like they get sucked into this thing. And the computer explains it. The reason why this time storm is happening is because the past has changed, which causes the present to cease to exist. And they point out Bishop as the actual fault of this.
And then we get to return to Bishop, who is back in 2055. And last time we left off, he was sent back to the future to after confronting this whole assassination attempt by Mystique, and he shows up and Forge is there. So we pick it up immediately from where it left off, from last season, which is a really, really cool moment. Like it just literally picks up and runs. Yeah. But he's in there with Forge, and Forge is telling him that the plague is still raging out of control. And since Senator Kelly was the president and he dedicated himself to mutant rights, like ever since that, there was a bunch of protest, and this plague got out and affected mutants specifically, and humans. Mutants were blamed, and then everybody started dying. And that's when Bishop asked, like, couldn't the X-Men stop it? And Forge says, who are the X-Men? And which is a kind of a cool moment too. Like something bad has happened. Like Bishop has gone back in time and done something not great.
Yeah. And the so Bishop's like, okay, we have a time machine. That means I can change this and go back in time. And Forge is like, okay, like
Yeah,
I'll trust you, time traveler. And Forge is very patient. He's like, I was outside the time stream, so I was not affected by any change. Like he just explains things to the audience of children and Bishop, who has the mind of a child.
Yeah.
As is evidence in this episode, because Bishop's performances and stuff are very funny in here. So we get a harmonica wipe back to the past as he travels back and
every time he talks, even in the middle of a fight, that like noise comes in. It's ridiculous.
He's got a little button in his pocket. He's just playing a little dot wave.
His Apple Time Watch has a soundboard, a harmonica soundboard.
Siri, whenever I talk, make sure you play harmonica.mp3. Yeah, so he buys a newspaper and pays with it with an Aladdin's Castle token. His weird future money. Yeah.
And then it's back to the mall. And Storm and Jubilee are thankfully in their civilian clothes getting a CD player repaired because Jubilee keeps blowing hers up.
Because it got exploded? Like, who's repairing this blown up Discman? Like, it's all crumpled and burnt and stuff. Like, what does repairing that look like?
Yeah, and this dude just seems like kind of put out by the whole endeavor. He's like, you're back and I have to repair this again. And I wanted to think, like, just send her to the Radio Shack down the street, man. Like, if you don't, like, she doesn't have to be your customer. Yeah.
Yeah, or just take her money. Like it doesn't look like business is booming. Like you would think, like,
or a new CD player.
Yeah, there you'll be looking forward to. You'll be appreciating that business soon. Once Apocalypse gets
the plot moving thing here is that there's a guy following Jubilee and Storm, and he's got a watch that has all of the X-Men's pictures on it, and he finally spots Jubilee. He follows the CD player repairman because that's definitely a job that still exists somewhere, and he follows him into the back, sprays him with his watch again, I think, or maybe there was a gun. I don't really remember where the spray comes from.
He has a device, a handheld, because it becomes like a Chekhov's virus gun later.
Sprays the dude gets sick, and then when he comes out and he's dealing with Jubilee and says that he's feeling under the weather, the guy who has sprayed him comes up and says, this mutant infected this guy, and then all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, he gets those little these techno-organic virus lines.
Yes.
Which we don't know that that's what it is. It's never called that, but that's how that's visually kind of telegraphed in the comics. Mm-hmm. Is these lines, and will become a thing later. There's a Phalanx Covenant episode of the show, which, like, whoa. We get Warlock in, like, about 2 years we'll be talking about Warlock. So Storm here is probably the not doing great work here, because Jubilee Storm comes through and is just like calls a mist to, like, they're mutants, and Storm's like, mutants would call a mist to blind their hatred, and just immediately shows herself to be a mutant. And then they attack her then, because she immediately instead of just being like trying to calm down or just getting out of there, she decided the best way was to ineffectually use her mutant power by making a slightly less convenient heir.
And it's important to note that Jubilee was actually losing control of her powers. Like, at this point, like, she gets kind of excited and just starts blowing shit up in the electronics store. So, like, things are got out of control, and this is Storm's idea to, like, I'm going to summon some mist because that will calm everybody down. Like, in the middle of a mall?
Yeah, what does when has mist ever made you calm?
There's a whole horror movie called The Mist.
I certainly love that I can't see and it's clammy out. Like, this is not being able to see makes me very relaxed. Like, they're not parakeets, Storm. Like, you put the little blinds on them and make them go to sleep. Like,
and Storm announcing what her power is and what her power will do every time she uses her powers is getting really fucking old. Like, it's just it's over. I'm gonna call the rains to put out the storm. Like, oh, dude, just do it.
I hated Storm for so long because of this, and that's why I love in that last episode so much, where it's like Darkstar's like, can you control any kind of weather? Yes. Just moving on. It's very funny. So Beast is checking out Jubilee in the med bay, and says there's nothing really wrong with her, but so they decide to go into the hospital and check the clerk and see what was going on with him. Mm-hmm. So Beast breaks into the hospital. It's like, okay. Something's definitely up. I understand. You're a scientist.
Sure.
But things are moving quick, man. Life comes at you fast here, because the city has immediately started quarantining mutants, including Beardo. Bad Beard and doesn't know how to dress, the two Morlocks that end up being our like victim Morlocks whenever we need Morlocks.
Yeah, anytime there's somebody a mutant being persecuted by the police, it's this guy. Like this
It's
poor
Captain
dude
Badbeard.
who has no powers except for bad beardness. Like it's horrible.
Yeah, I knew a lot of guys like that in high school.
Their only power is a bad beard.
Yeah. Like it just couldn't grow in, so but they kept trying.
Yeah.
Pretty unfortunate.
Hey, kids out there, don't do that.
Yeah, if you can't do it, it's okay not to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Storm recognizes the guy from the CD player shop, and clues the rest of the team in of like, hey, number one, like mutants are in trouble and we should go protect them, but also like this seems like a setup.
Yeah, this dude who is protesting and saying like, hey, mutants carry the plague, and throwing bottles at Beardo, was there too. So. Yeah.
Bishop, in the meantime, in the time it takes the X-Men to get over there, Bishop shows up first because Bishop follows Trouble and Trouble follows Bishop. He tries to calm the crowd down and start throwing vegetables at him like he's a bad comedian, and then he just immediately goes from calm down to shoot laser blast at the concrete in front of the civilians.
It's really amazing. What was he like? Bishop is such a dipshit in this, and it's when we get these fights with Cable, and Cable just owns everybody. It's because he's not an idiot. Like Bishop, Bishop's plan is literally, I'm a time traveler. Like, stop doing what you're doing. The plague is not caused by mutants. And it's okay. Whatever, however you're dressed. I don't even know how to describe you, meat thigh. Like, I'm not gonna trust you. Like. And then they shoot him is what happened. So I think this is I think we learned about his powers before, but Bishop can if he absorbs energy and redirects it. So he's like a battery.
I think this is kind of the first time, because in the next episode this happens to Cable, and Cable is like, what the heck is this? I think they're kind of cluing in, like we haven't seen this. And also just to bring up something, in the very first episode of this podcast, you started talking about Bishop and you made a he's my future joke.
Yeah.
And the first episode with Bishop is kind of mild with that. On this episode, he leans into it. He got some voice direction in between these episodes because he is straight up future.
Yeah. How many syllables are there in future?
Future.
Like probably like 4. Future.
Bishop's family, as many as you want to be.
Yeah, just do it. He just, and this does that thing that cartoons do where like nobody will just fucking have a conversation that explain everything.
Yep.
Like, he could be like, hey, this is impossible for you to understand, but I'm a time traveler. Read my mind. Like, he could make this happen, and make it understandable, but does not. So as this happening, he kind of does, but he just says euros and millions in my future and expects everyone to take his word for it. Wolverine jumps on Bishop, thrown into the mob. Storm summons some rain to calm their fury.
Because I guess the mist didn't work last time, so you're like, I'll try rain next.
Mist has evolved into rain. It's serious when she actually uses hail.
Yeah, exactly. This next scene is one of my favorite things in the show. Friends of Humanity show up, and if you've been listening to the podcast and along as it's coming out, like Friends of Humanity are basically Nazis in this thing. Like that's how. And then Storm runs over, and I in the notes I wrote it like step by step because I love it so much. Picks him up. Flies him into the air, crushes his gun, puts him in the garbage can, and then kicks the garbage can down the road.
Not Storm. Yeah, Rogue does this because she shoots Storm. Yeah, and you said Storm did. Yeah, Rogue does this.
Oh, sorry, I meant Rogue. Yeah. But just like, man, fuck yeah, Rogue. Like,
yeah,
that's so
bash
good.
the bash, man. Like, yeah.
If I could make animated GIFs, I'd make that dude into like a little miniature Trump head and put that on the internet somewhere.
It is absolutely okay to beat the shit out of Nazis.
100%.
So good job, Rogue. Bash the fash. So eventually they just kind of withdraw, and Bishop. This is when he tries to explain what's going on. Beast confirms like the virus is engineered, and they're like, okay, we need to talk to the president because he's on our side now.
And this is also where we hear our first time of Cyclops kind of berating Bishop, and like, you can't go out on your own. You're causing too many problems. But he's talking to him like he's a member of the team. And I know he's like Future Man with an X on his chest, but like, you're not in the team. He's not in the team, Cyclops. What are you doing?
To Cyclops, everybody is an X-Men. Like, just the world is made up of X-Men. We're recording 2 episodes today, and it is a real spotlight for angry Cyclops.
Oh yeah.
Like, Cyclops is such a cranky little baby during all of these. It's pretty great. Like, especially it's like the one bright spot of a couple episodes coming up next episode of the podcast. So we go to the Friends of Humanity's headquarters, and head Friends of Humanity guy, Graydon Creed, we find out,
Yeah.
says like, okay, Beast is on TV. He's their like public face. He's friends with the president, and he's gone before Senate and stuff. We're gonna infect him. And he goes on to leave. He's been talking to the scientist who made the virus, and then it's revealed that the guy who made the virus has kind of purple glowy eyes and wants to kill mutants and humans, and kind of does his voice a little bit. It's not revealed yet, but we find out this is Apocalypse.
Yes.
Essentially, yeah.
And then we flash over to, and this is such an abrupt change. It feels like they're at some sort of trial. Like there's a judicial committee. Like people are giving speeches. There's an audience. All of the X-Men are there. Like it's like a public debate.
Whenever Beast has to talk to the president, they call a town hall meeting with the president. Beast has that power.
Mr. President, Kelly is the moderator. Like,
yes. Salutations, Mr. President. Perhaps I can have a moment of your time. It is pretty ridiculous. I don't think I really noticed that. It feels like there's a scene missing. Like,
it really does. And I went to my DVDs, but there's no deleted scenes for this on any of the DVDs, unfortunately. So, but Creed is talking first, and he says that they should, it's all of the mutants' fault, and he has 5,000 names that are confirmed mutants that are out there that nobody knows about. And while he's saying this, it flashes through. And again, this is one of those situations where they could have just used mutants. Like, there's plenty of other mutants out there, but they go to War Machine for some reason, and like two other dudes. I sent you the screenshot with this, and I had no idea.
The other dude, the other dudes are Nick Fury and the other Shield guy. God, it's not Glover. There's a guy who's like one of Cable's enemies. Cable's villains, who is a Shield guy. That's
Nick Fury in that picture? Seriously?
I think that's supposed to be Nick Fury sitting at the console.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very weird. And War Machine should not be there. It feels like an error. It's also very explicitly that like I have a list of this many names is a very explicit callback to McCarthyism. That is
oh, dude, that is Nick Fury, and he's also sitting backwards on his chair while wearing knee pads.
Guidance counselor. Like, I'm gonna tell you kids about something. Life model decoys are no joke. That's fantastic.
I'm just gonna put that in there.
That's very good.
So he says that they have 5,000 names, and at this point, the judge or whatever, like the guy that's running this debate, like stops him and it says, "Okay, now it's time for the mutants' turn." And Roe looks over to Beast and says,
"That ought to put that Peckerwood in his place."
That's very good.
How did that slip through the standards and practices?
Well, they just thought it was like a folksy Southern like word. Sure. They didn't realize that pecker means dingus and wood means boner. Like, it's awesome. Yeah.
It's so good. We'll probably drop the Peckerwood sample in there somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. So the Friends of Humanity does again X-Men. In a million years, I never would have thought that doing this show would be too real. So the X-Men does the Alex Jones fucking Pizzagate bullshit of saying like the government's, this actual like source that you're using is fake. Anything that disagrees with my point is actually fake conspiracy baiting. So that's what he's doing. Hey, the government is hiding something. Beast gets up to talk to put this guy in his place, like do a real like Bill Nye debating science, climate change thing, and just shut this guy down. He gets this little he has a little asthma inhaler thing he's gonna zap Beast with some poison mist, but Bishop attacks him, and the X-Men are like, what the fuck? Like, Bishop, calm down.
And then it just explodes. Like all of the audience members start attacking the X-Men. Wolverine starts knocking over human civilians. Like it just disintegrates and like no civilization whatsoever. They finally get everybody out of there, and yet again another example of Cyclops being like, "Bishop, you're no good for the team. You're not doing it right. You're not a real X-Men." Like,
I don't work for you. You don't sign I'm a time traveler. Your money is worthless to me. But he says he had an airborne device, and then people got sick. So Beast declaratively statements his way through the explanation, and Beast uses like the Blade Runner zoom and enhance thing to verify it. Like, he did have a asthma inhaler.
And he's like impressed. He's like, an airborne device.
Okay, he says something like fiendishly clever. Really?
Yeah.
Like, please shut up. I love that. That's very funny. So that's they're like, okay, we have to go to the Friends of Humanity, but we do get a little side thing to Cable, who learns that Bishop is the key to this, which is going to be more important for episode 2. Yeah.
So now the X-Men go to the Friends of Humanity's headquarters, which is like a dude's house, and Jean Grey,
it is the first part of it is, but they scan it to find their like basement HQ that's full of super high tech, like with like white supremacists with like future tech.
Oh man, let's hope that never.
Yeah.
Anyway, but Jean Grey, scans it in and finds not only Creed. We didn't actually mention that during the struggle, Creed actually infects himself with his own virus. So he goes back to the Friends of Humanity and goes back to the scientist who created the the virus and says, "Hey, you have to cure me." And there's kind of like a discussion happening there. Jean Grey scans, finds that Creed is very sick, and also finds this other presence, which like we said earlier, Apocalypse. They raid the place, and I just want to call out one brief moment of animation because it's going to matter in the next episode, of Wolverine kind of running towards a fence with the X-Men in all formation behind them, Rogue and Storm flying in the air, Cyclops running the whole nine, and like Wolverine claws the fence down, and then there's a fight. I just want to call specific attention to that because we're going to see something very similar in the next episode of the show, and I just want to mention it.
Okay.
But they go downstairs, they find Apocalypse, and Apocalypse does his normal thing, which is just wipe the fucking floor with the X-Men.
Yeah, he can shape change. He's got all of his powers, and he's incredibly strong.
Yeah.
It's very cool. There's a line I'll always remember that I always think of when I think of Apocalypse is, Creed sees that his lackey is actually Apocalypse, and he goes like, "You're a mutant," and he goes, "I am as far above mutants as they are above humans.
I am as far beyond mutants as they are beyond you. I am eternal."
It's very cool.
Apocalypse's delivery has not gotten old for me at all. Whereas Creed's like that high pitched mutant stuff goes on for way too long.
Yeah. Creed is pretty terrible in this.
Yeah. So at this point, like the X-Men are pretty much down. Bishop throws a grenade at the virus and then like basically explodes the place. Apocalypse.
Yeah, like this airborne virus that couldn't have disastrous ramifications to like vaporize it. That's so stupid.
It's so dumb.
Bishop, come
Bishop
on.
is such an idiot. The X-Men try to flee and they get outside of the house, but Apocalypse is still in there. So he decides to just grow himself into a giant and he breaks down the house. The X-Men are right there in front of him, and he just murders the X-Men. Like, bam, kills them.
Yeah. And it's like, well, shit. End of the series.
We're done.
But then we go to Cable, and his computer says the virus was the reason why all this stuff happened, and is that the virus is actually good for mutant kind. It did
mutants to form antibodies. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the same way that like big plagues and whatever can actually be helpful. This is one of those things. So it's needed. So Cable says, I have to go back and actually help Apocalypse create this virus in order to protect my world.
And it's been very apparent that like Cable's pretty much been fighting Apocalypse his whole life, or if not for his whole life, like he's involved in a pretty heavy war. So this is like a moment of crisis for him. Like, oh crap, like I can't believe I have to save my own world. I have to help Apocalypse. Like he's torn up about this.
So that brings us right into XM208, Time Fugitives Part 2, original air date December 18th, 1993. Cable comes to the present to stop Bishop and save his own future world. But after a one-sided fight against Bishop and the X-Men, Cable realizes they might be too powerful to handle on his own. Looking for an alternative, Cable looks to the X-Men's history and discovers that Logan's healing factor may be the key to saving the future.
Which again is like 10 minutes into the episode. TV guy, what are you doing?
it's pretty much the ending, like, quote-unquote, like, twist here. So yeah,
we're back in 39.99 to start out with, and Cable is like, I guess he's about to teleport back when his son, who also has a like android arm and also has a weird eye, his son Tyler disappears to the temporal storm. So Cable is now like, all of a sudden the stakes have been greatly raised for Cable. Like his own son is gone now.
I haven't thought about Tyler in a long time. Tyler is a character I really hated from the 90s comics. Like when Tyler showed up, it was like, oh, geez. It reminded me of in Star Trek Next Generation when Worf's son, which Alexander would show up, like, father, you know, like he's got just a really kind of annoying voice. And it's just like, man, Worf, like, why you don't have to deal with this bullshit? Yeah. Anywho, it's something. But so Tyler shows up, so he's like, oh shit, now I'm really gonna do it.
Cable teleports back in time, and I love that if you're going to teleport back to 1993, you're going to do it in this alley in New York. Like, there's no other spot.
The temporal codex.
But he teleports to the spot, or time travels to the spot that Bishop always shows up in, and he does it right as Bishop has teleported back. So it's kind of an interesting moment where we know all of this has already happened one way, so we immediately think like, oh shit, now Cable is here, so this is going to play out differently. And there's a great exchange between Cable and Bishop where Cable goes,
Bishop, I already know that part.
I think that's very, very funny. It's actually pretty like awesome though, like just how, you know, kind of weird that kids are seeing this thing where it's like, oh, they have to understand that this is the same thing that already happened again. Like they have to understand timelines and things like that. And I love that trust, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the rest of this episode does some really fun, like it doesn't get to a primer level of time travel, but like it does some fun stuff.
You don't have to take notes.
No, to make this work, you don't need a diagram. At least I don't think you do.
So Cable is unprepared for Bishop's power set, and he's not, you know, the telekinetic god that he actually is. You know, when he doesn't have the techno-organic virus going on, Cable would be a telekinetic god. So he's not using those powers. And he's kind of surprised. So he actually loses to Bishop. But he has these teleporting things he can do called body slides. So he body slides by one. That's how he decides, you know, he tells his Siri how to do it. And he intercepts Bishop and they're fighting more. So this is a lot of fighting in this episode. And it's the best fighting in the series, I think. Yeah. These are really, really cool fights.
And they both have kind of interesting. Not only do they have interesting powers, but they also have like interesting technology with them. So like there's this whole scene where Bishop is hiding and Cable like uses his infrared eye to scan. And like it's as cheesy as it sounds, it's actually pretty cool because usually with the X-Men, it's Scott's using laser beams, Wolverine's using claws. Yep. Like it's a one per mutant thing. And now we have like kind of a mixed set, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah. And if we didn't have kind of cool technology 2,000 years in the future, you know, just for regular war, like it would be pretty sad state of affairs. So like he does a lot of stuff during this fight, like that seeing through walls. It feels kind of video gamey in a way that I like, oh, these are like Dishonored powers, like the little, you know, he gets specifically that IR thing. He gets a thing where he can generate decoys. He gets a gun that destroys cover. And I'm like, oh, these are all like, you know, this is very much like video game power ups, but he's a fully powered character. So the X-Men show up to where the Beardo and company are getting kind of harassed while this fight is going on. Mm-hmm. So Bishop couldn't be there to like stand there and you know, blast all the protesters.
Well, he does that. Like Bishop gets away from Cable because.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
There's a moment where Cable had Bishop in his sights and chooses not to kill him, and then like has this conversation where the computer chides him and is like Syria is like, no, you really should have killed him, Cable, and Cable's like, I've seen so much killing. Like, didn't you come in here to kill this dude? Like, I thought that was what you were doing, man.
Not unless he has to. If he can convince him not to, he says like, I'm not going to kill him until I have to.
Yeah. But then we see Bishop. We catch up with Bishop as he's blasting all of the humans again. He loses his temper, except this time Cable is on the roof taking pot shots at him, and that's when the X-Men show up, and all of this is super good. I love this.
Yeah, the X-Men notice Cable first. They're like, "What's that?" Wolverine's like, "Who's that time jockey?" So they want to help Bishop because they know him, and Rogue knows Cable from Genosha, but she doesn't know anything about him because honestly, like Cable's appearance in Genosha was a total non sequitur. Like we never get a real follow up on who the leader was or the wild man of Borneo or any of that stuff. Like that never becomes a thing. So don't hold your breath for this to provide the link between, you know, 1993 Cable and $39, you know,
$39.99.
$9.99 Cable. Just never going to happen. But what it means is that Rogue knows him, but doesn't necessarily know he's a good guy. You know?
I had completely forgotten, because I was watching this and Rogue does recognize him, but I had completely forgotten that Rogue and Cable like were the ones to try to break Storm and them out of that.
Sure.
Genosha. Yeah. So when she said that, I was like, is there some other time travel shit in here that I'm missing, or what? Yeah.
And they do the thing that, you know, that the X-Men do, which is just kind of try to get everyone to stop fighting so they can figure out what's going on. You know, so they kind of fight both sides.
The rest of the X-Men at this point. Oh no, this is where Cable puts out his decoy and Bishop starts shooting at the decoy and it goes through and he's super disappointed about the whole thing.
Oh man!
The rest of the X-Men start fighting. Cable, like, I love this whole thing because it's fairly complicated for a fight scene. Cable shoots the building that the Blackbird has landed on, which causes Cyclops to fall, and the plane. Storm has to swoop down and grab Cyclops, and Jean's trying to like hold onto this plane, which she can barely do with her telekinetic powers until Rogue comes over there and saves her. And it's classic Cable, right? Like he's a tactics guy, so like shooting us to distract them and to make them busy while he's focusing on his target is, I think, very, very smart. Like whoever's writing this fight scene is actually doing a really good job.
It's also in line with the comics Cable. Like the first comic I remember with Cable, and it probably wasn't the first one I read, was part of that Fatal Attractions crossover we talked about last time. Mm-hmm. And the X-Force version of that, Cable had been missing for a long time. He comes back to the X-Force compound, and there's like a mysterious assailant that's taking everyone out. And it's Cable taking everyone out, but he's just using their tactics against them and using his mind. So Cable at his best, like he's kind of a Rob Liefeld nightmare character, like, you know, lots of pouches, lots of shoulder pads and shit. But at his best, as like a you know, the dark side of the Xavier's dream, kind of forged in under Apocalypse's rule. Like I actually like the character. Yeah, you know, at its core. So Rogue and Cable are fighting. Cable essentially just has this gun, this cool laser gun. This is where he's using his gun that destroys cover. Yeah. Like Bishop is running away and he zaps like a garbage can that Bishop's hiding behind, and it just starts glowing. Like it's like a gun that shoots Gambit's power.
which is way better than Gambit, just in general.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, is here. We haven't mentioned Gambit, but he has basically nothing to do. Like he shows up and throws a card and then leaves.
Yeah.
The thing that I also like here is that Cable also takes a little time out of this fight to like beat up on some Friends of Humanity's assholes.
Yeah.
Which is really good.
Fast, man. So Cable is like, okay, you know, I'm not losing this fight necessarily, but I'm not winning. I need to know more about these guys because, again, he's a smart fighter. So he body slides out and uses his computer to learn about the X-Men. This is the little hint about the Cyclops and Jean Grey, where like it says Cyclops got summaries. He goes, I already know about him and Jean Grey. Yeah, and that's all the show does to hint that he's their son from the future,
which is probably pretty smart. Like this is good stuff, because if you're reading the comic books, like with the show, like you pretty much already know this, and it's a fun, like, hey, it's like a fun, like little cameo. But if you're not reading the comics, if this is your only exposure to the X-Men, you immediately want to know more. Of like, well, wait, why does he know more? And like want to go seek that out. It's just another example of the show and the comics like really working together, like super well. Yeah,
it's very cool. It is. I like it a lot. So he eventually gets to Wolverine and his X-Men like Rolodex, and is like, okay, that gives me an idea. Cut back to that hearing, the weird court case or whatever is going on there, and Cable. What is this quip you've got in the notes? Tell me it, because I don't remember
it. It's when Cable comes out of the telephone and he says,
"Time to reach out and touch someone."
That's still, that commercial is still relevant. They'd be like us remembering commercials from Babylonian times.
Sure. Yeah. How does
like,
he know?
Why does he know?
How does he know a 2,000-year-old commercial?
like the Terminator comes through the time thing and it's like, where's the beef? And then like, don't use slogans, Cable.
Starman shows up and is like, I'm a PC. What are you?
Oh, that's so stupid.
So good.
Oh, man.
But the same scene is playing out, right? So, like, Creed has gotten up to do his thing. We don't get to hear Rogue say Peckerwood for a second time, but I'll probably put the audio in here anyway.
That ought to put that Peckerwood in his place.
And at this point, Beast has gotten up to give his speech, and Bishop attacks Creed, who was trying to infect Beast with his technovirus. And that's where Cable shows up, and then just everything again just goes to shit.
Yeah.
Like,
well, this is Cable's idea to do this because he's just trying to lure Wolverine out.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, Wolverine shows up. Cable calls him outdated.
And it really pisses Wolverine off.
That's really good. I love it. And then Cable, again playing the long con, just grabs Wolverine and just teleports away. Jean gets a telepathic read on him. Is like, oh my god. But he's got Wolverine, which is what he needs.
Mm-hmm. And then he teleports him into like the world's scummiest hotel and like tries to explain what's going on. And of course, Wolverine is not having any of this stuff. All he wants to do is fight. So Cable just knocks him out. And then like the scene, Wolverine wakes up and like he's still like nothing changes. And then they just teleport away. Like he still doesn't know what's going on.
He had dreams of them becoming friends.
Yeah.
Like, which I mean, it isn't in the cartoon, but it's not like Cable's not a telepathic. Like Cable would technically be able to just make Wolverine do the thing.
Yeah.
So for people who don't read the comics at all, like Cable's whole thing is he's like a mega powerful telepath, but he has this virus that is a machine taking over his body, and it takes almost all of his power to stop it from doing so. Yeah. So he uses all of his telekinesis to stop this virus from encroaching. If he didn't have to do that, he would be like a god tier, best telekinetic in the world.
Which I'm sure will be very well explained and realized in Deadpool 2.
Yes.
Come to a theater near you.
So he should have taken Beast there to translate all the smart words to Wolverine, but instead he makes him take a exposition nap. So Wolverine wakes up knowing what's going on. And when Wolverine wakes up, he's in the Friends of Humanity HQ, or he wakes up and then is teleported because that's where Cable needs to go to find the virus.
And we see this at this point. This is the scene that I was calling back. So they teleport in, and then in the same scene we see the X-Men plane land, and this is the X-Men from the previous episode, like raiding the HQ and trying to get to the lab underneath. Except this time, like there's this really cool animation scene, and I wanted to call it out because the animation in this series is, especially starting from these episodes, has gotten better and better and better. Like some of these episodes I think are actually really, really good and hold up, and stuff like this have taken the time to do 2 different scenes of this, one with Wolverine in the lead and one with Cyclops. I thought was very, very cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, these are superlative episodes. Like these are episodes, I think you had to watch the Bishop episodes to really get them before this. But if you were going to like sell this series on anyone, it would be this pair of episodes. It is like a clever time travel story.
And I haven't caught it up every single time, but if you're out there trying to picture these fights, anytime Bishop does anything, you do hear the harmonica song. Like it's every single time.
Yeah, and I don't think we get Cable's theme. I don't think
we do a couple times.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
And every time it happens, like I'm fist pumping in the air. I'm like, yes.
So they show up here. Apocalypse shoots Wolverine, which causes him to fall into the virus storage. And the X-Men are about to save him. They're like, oh no. And Cable puts his arm and is like, no, this is what we need. And everybody, the audience gets it at this point. But for people who don't understand it, Wolverine getting the virus is the best possible way to create the antibodies. Because he's got the healing factor.
I do want to call out that every time Cable sees Apocalypse in the past, he's like, my name is Cable, remember it. And it happens, I think twice during like a 5-minute span. Like Cable is really fucking with this dude at this point.
It's kind of a badass move though. Like if you imagine, like you just see some guy who never, you don't know him. He just seems like some random weirdo, and he's like, remember my name. And then he turns out to be the biggest thorn in your side for the rest of your life. Like the one leader of the resistance and shit. Like that's pretty awesome. The first time like Apocalypse first saw him. It's a pretty
really,
baller
really
move.
Good. Yeah. I like this.
It's very funny, but it's a power play, which I like a lot. So the virus is destroyed. Apocalypse gets furious and Bishop goes back to his future.
I like how in this timeline, Apocalypse leaves. Like he's not mad enough to kill the X-Men. He's mad enough to go.
Well, it was never his like intention just to kill the X-Men. He wants the strongest to survive, and the virus was the point of that. So the X-Men that can survive the virus, he wants to survive. So it makes sense with his ideology, at least a little bit. So Forge doesn't know anything about the plague, so their future is kind of saved. Wolverine is fine. He's, well, Doc, do I get a clean bill of health? Like it's a very weird scene. And then Cable goes back to his future, and everything is, still fighting Apocalypse, but it's not time stormed out.
Yeah,
Tyler's dead.
and Tyler is back. And then there's the scene where Beast is looking at the antibodies, and it's like, wow, these are going to be really useful. And I'm like, what are you going to do with those antibodies, Beast?
Yeah,
Probably nothing good.
Dark Beast. We get the little microscope shot with the the cool little antibodies grabbing the cells.
Because when it comes to Wolverine, even his antibodies have to be badass.
Yeah. Very good.
And then like the bucking the trend of this season, like we don't get any kind of Magneto or Xavier business in the Savage Land, which thank God, what a relief.
Which makes me feel like, and I don't have anything to back this up, but I was wondering whether this is were season 1 episodes.
Yeah, I could see
at some
that.
point, because they're direct sequels to it, and they don't have anything to do with the kind of short story structure of this season.
Yeah, we cover this series in the episode aired order, and we go by like the creator's website on like what season 1 and season 2 is. But the DVDs are all over the place. I had actually these at the end of season 1. I think these are on the season 1 DVDs if I remember correctly. When I ripped them from the DVD the first time, I was like, oh shit, all my numbers are wrong. Like they're not matching up on the internet because all of this stuff. So there's definitely some weirdness going on with the ordering, I think.
Yeah. Yep. Should we spotlight?
We should do a spotlight.
These are the tales of the
Yeah. We talked about Cable, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So yeah, Cable is, I find him fascinating. Like I didn't particularly like him in like early 90s X-Force stuff. But about that time is when I was getting out of comics. So, and then when I got back into them, I picked up a series called I think it was Deadpool and Cable actually, where like Cable is a mutant messiah creating this ultimate like palace thing out in the ocean. And like some of that stuff was like some of the strongest Cable comics that I've read, even with Deadpool and it being goofy, because like Cable seemed to have like these crazy motives and things that he wants to do to save the human race or the mutant race and all this other stuff. And I tried to keep up with it for as long as I could, but it just never went anywhere for me. And I wanted it to go somewhere. And then I went back and read some of the Hope stuff where he's protecting Hope and things like that. And that's interesting and good, but I don't know, like, where was your kind of first, you mentioned your first Cable experience, but where did you finally grow to like him at?
Well, I probably liked him then because I was a little kid and I remember liking X-Force, which X-Force is like that incarnation of X-Force is objectively, I think, pretty shitty, but I remember liking it. And it sucks because it's born right out of the New Mutants. So the New Mutants, which are pretty cool, are just teens. And then, Dark Dad comes along to turn them into military teens and it like becomes less cool. But I liked it because I was, that age where I like that stuff. And then I kind of fell out of it. And when I came back was when they were doing the Cable and Deadpool stuff, which had a really good reputation, but I never watched it because never read it because I don't like Deadpool. And all my memory of Cable was him being pretty shitty. Mm-hmm. But eventually he kind of joined the X-Men. He kind of had some dalliances with them. And that kind of got me into reading it a little bit. And the reading about him, he's a really interesting character because he's got out of all the different time travelers, he's got like such a permanent sense of stakes, mm-hmm. Where it's like, I've seen he's the guy who has seen the bad future. Bishop has as well, but Bishop is a little bit more naive and stuff because he's younger. Cable has been fighting his entire life. So it's like, and there's all this stuff with him being trained to be the perfect soldier by the Ascani and all these things from the pretty lamentable Cyclops and Jean Grey miniseries.
And his origin, if I remember correctly, is that in the future Scott and Jean have a baby, or is it the future, or is it a different timeline? I can never remember. Like I don't quite. I think maybe a different timeline, and they hide him in the time stream to like save him from apocalypse. So he grows up like bouncing through timelines and bouncing through like all of these different time periods and full of war. Like that's all this dude does for his entire life is fight.
Well, and the interesting thing is like this is. So the fact that he is this messiah and has these powers and stuff, this is why Sinister wants him. So when Sinister wants Jean Grey and Cyclops, it's because of Cable.
Yep.
And that doesn't get a payoff in this cartoon yet. I think that it maybe is referenced later, but so far it doesn't really do that. But making Apocalypse his villain instead of Sinister was a very weird choice to me. Mm-hmm. And it speaks to the fact that some of that stuff was made up as it went along. as they were going along. I don't think Cable was introduced. I think he was always supposed to be Jean Grey and Cyclops' son, but I don't think that Mr. Sinister's motivations were introduced at that point. There's some weird kind of stuff with comics and retcons and everything to make that a thing, but that kind of pays off the Age of Apocalypse stuff where Nate Gray, as opposed to that version of Cable, who is like a young guy, is like literally like he's the one who wins Age of Apocalypse more or less.
Mm-hmm.
And takes it back and he goes back to the real world and like he's a messiah there. Like he X-Man is his name, which is a terrible name, but he floats around and he kind of like he's like the philosophical super. He's like too powerful to care about regular things. Like he doesn't wear shoes because he doesn't have to walk because he just floats everywhere. Like they do a good job of explaining, so in a weird way he pulls double duty as showing the stakes for the future under Apocalypse. Like, hey, Apocalypse, it may sound like survival of the fittest is all right, you Ayn Randist motherfuckers, but it's really not. And then it also shows like motivates Sinister. Like the fact that he's so powerful makes Sinister make a little bit more sense. Which is
we
cool.
even get into Strife at all, or do you just want to step past that?
No, yeah, let's skip. So there's a clone of Cable who's called Strife.
I was saying that as a joke. Like,
yeah,
go look that up if you want like a wiki hole to drop into sometime.
Yeah, Strife, who is the main antagonist of the Executioner song, which is another early '90s crossover that like I have some affection for because I read it at the appropriate time, even though it's not good.
These are the tales of the
So moving on to XM209, A Rogue's Tale, original air date January 8th, 1994. When Mystique forces Rogue to revisit her own past, Rogue's overpowering flashbacks cause her to relive the encounter with Miss Marvel and drive her from the X-Men. Rogue struggles with Miss Marvel's thoughts, which are trapped in her mind, and the two battle it out on the psychic plane.
A much better psychic plane than the psychic planes we've seen before.
Yeah, this is better than Shadow King shit.
Sure. I think I texted you on the Slack of like, I was way surprised in this episode. Like reading the description, I thought this was going to be handled pretty poorly. And I think some of Rogue's voice acting in the early scenes gets a little too much, but man, like it's actually kind of handled pretty well. I don't like the fact that it gets glossed over all at the end, but like at the beginning of this, I was really, really digging this episode.
It's the best possible way they could have explained Rogue's actual origin. Mm-hmm. Like, because they couldn't have done this as like a little cutaway during the first episode. It would have been unreasonable. But they actually handle kind of pushing that aside and sticking a pin in it and making it a reveal later for Rogue as well. Making it this kind of these memories coming back that she had kind of suppressed is a really elegant way to explain why, like, oh, everyone just totally trusts Rogue. They don't think of her as a former supervillainess. They don't, think about her crimes to the Avengers and stuff. So it's really, really elegantly done. And moves at a good pace. It's got a couple of visual things I'm not crazy about, but I think this actually does a pretty good job of things. It doesn't. I don't know how it would play to somebody who has no idea about the comics. So you just kind of have to assume, like, it's anything where it acknowledges other superheroes in the world in a non-Easter egg fashion. Means you have to start dealing with the fact that, like, oh, Apocalypse is here. Why are you not calling the Avengers?
Exactly.
Like that would have been a thing to do. So acknowledging the presence of the Avengers in a direct way like that is a little weird, but that's comics.
Yeah. And if you don't know the comics, like this is just some random superhero like that shows up. Miss Marvel is just like some chick. Like you have no idea about her. Yeah. It's kind of an interesting thing, but getting into the episode, this first kind of cold open scene is very, very, very good. Like I love the woman walking down the street and then the guy tries to like mug her for her umbrella, but like not her wallet or anything. He's just got some water in his eye and turns around and was like, "You give me your umbrella."
And she puts the umbrella down, and when it comes back up, she's a monster, and scares him away. And this is actually Mystique.
Yep.
And she's going to go meet Mr. Sinister here because she needs a powerful evil mutant to serve at any given point.
She needs someone to tell her what to do at all times, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I do want to call it, like, this particular scene, it has some pretty good lighting, even if there's some really like ham-handed, like, I guess I would say prop work, except it's like a cartoon. But at some point Mystique lights a candle and like that's on like a little candle holder thing, like an old timey, like, I'm gonna walk around my mansion. And then she drops it when Sinister tells her that Xavier is no longer with the X-Men. Sinister walks over, steps on the candle, and then Mystique is like, "Oh, I still need light," and like flicks a Zippo to light it up. And as dumb as that is, the actual lighting effects here look really, really cool. Like they do this several times where Sinister is talking and he's just red eyes on a black screen, which is the best that Sinister could ever be.
It's also cool blocking. Like it's giving these characters something to do other than just stand and kind of proclaim things to each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's cinematic in a way that this cartoon is not always cinematic.
Yep.
Super good. So meanwhile, we go to the fair where Avalanche and Pyro are attacking with Blob, and this is the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, essentially Mystique's team, who she inherited from Magneto.
Yep.
Here in their first appearance, and Blob has this line delivery of finding like, so Blob is not like his superpower is not that he's fat, and there's nothing about Blob that should imply that he overeats. He's got a mutant condition where he's, has the suite of powers and stuff, but the cartoon version is just a big fat piece of shit who can't avoid ice cream when it's there. Like, I've got a mission, but I'm going to sit here because there's tutti frutti ice cream. And the way he's like, tutti frutti.
That's really weird.
Oh, man. It's very strange. And tutti frutti is one of those things where, like, I never saw that when I was a kid, but I saw it referenced. Like it would show up in things like this. I guess it is a frozen yogurt.
Yeah, I literally had to Google it just now because I was like, I'm not sure what Tutti Frutti is. Apparently, there's some Tutti Frutti stores local to me though. That's weird.
It's a frozen yogurt with chopped up pieces of candy inside it.
Yeah, but the case he's eating out of it just says like vanilla ice cream. So like really a breakdown of
he just thinks all ice cream is Tutti Frutti.
Sure.
And the X-Men show up like it's another day at the office. Like these dipshits are ruining the carnival.
But also, I like this because this is finally like X-Men doing some superhero shit. Like some mutants, like some bad mutants are doing some bad shit, and the X-Men have shown up to try to stop them. Like it's not. Finally, we have something that's like not of their own creation. You know what I'm saying? Or somebody like it's actual like superhero team business, and I kind of dig this.
Yeah. It is. It's superhero team business, even though it is still a subversion because they're being lured here.
Yeah.
This is not actually.
I just like seeing the X-Men not be terrorists for one goddamn minute, Gary. Give it to me.
Oh, totally.
Just give it to me.
Yeah. I agree with you there.
Storm flies up and Blob accuses her, or I don't think accuses her, says that she can't have any ice cream and then throws the ice cream at her.
Yep. Knocks her out of the air and knocks her out by getting hit with a gallon of ice cream.
Good job.
Extremely
Storm.
good.
Yeah.
Very funny. Rogue gets knocked into some ice cream. There's a lot of ice cream going on.
A lot of ice cream in this episode.
And ice cream wipe too. And she starts having these kind of visions here. She's been having these visions in the time. She tells the team Xavier had blocked out a bunch of her memories at this point.
Yeah.
At some point in the
past. The team are back at the X Mansion. Like they've obviously knocked up the rest and brought her back, and she wakes up in the med bay.
Yeah, and they don't capture Avalanche and Pyro say when they show up, they're like, "Hey, we did what we need to do. They showed up. Let's get out of here."
Yeah.
And they run away.
And I just want to make note, like since their time in Louisiana, Gambit and Rogue are now like very like cuddly and PDA with each other as much as Rogue can have PDA with somebody.
Yes, this is building to something in the next set of episodes we're going to talk about.
So she's kind of freaking out, and she flies out of the med bay window, which okay, whatever. And she comes across Wolverine, who is taken the top of his uniform on, left the bottom of the uniform, and is chopping wood with his claws. Which, okay, like whatever, dude. That's what you do in your spare time. But she starts like flashing with this like unknown blonde woman on top of Wolverine, and the blonde woman is like saying things that are like, this is your fault, and so she starts attacking Wolverine. Gambit comes up behind her, and the same thing happens. She attacks Gambit, and then freaks out when she sees that it's Gambit. And this continues to happen for like a while. Like this is probably like a good 5 or 6 minutes of Rogue seeing an X-Man, thinking that it's the blonde woman, and then just tripping out and flying away.
Yeah. So she's having a mental breakdown.
Mm-hmm. The big moment is where Jean Grey finds her and then senses another presence in her mind. And then so she flies away again, which like take a shot every time Rogue runs away from her problems in this episode. She flies to the Statue of Liberty, which
Well, she flies crashing through the floors of the mansion.
Oh yeah,
which I know she's done that before too, where she goes. Psh, psh, psh. It's like a cutaway, like a doll's house. As they smash it away out, which is amazing. Like, God damn it, Rogue.
There's that great shot too where you're like looking where like because each floor and directly on top of each other, an X-Man is doing something. Like Storm's at the top in her garden, Jubilee's playing video games, Wolverine's doing something, like, and you get to see that moment where they all like look up at the camera from the hole. It's a really good shot.
It's great. It's super good. It's also a good reason why Rogue only gets one car instead of her 2 cars per month that she would be paid with, because they had to sell one of those cars to fix the X floor.
I wonder who's cashing Xavier's checks since he's been in the Savage Land. Do you think that's they're just on an auto draft? You think
yeah, hopefully everything's on auto pay. Otherwise, he left his ATM card with Scott. Somebody's maybe making withdrawals, not Gene.
I was gonna say that his ATM code probably spells out Gene, so good job.
Yeah, it's Gene XXX because my name is Xavier. You see. Yeah.
But so Rogue sees yet again the blonde woman, and this time the blonde woman leads her to the hospital where she says, I'm here. And then this is a kind of a weird thing. Like Rogue goes into the hospital and Storm follows her. Mystique is there and fools Storm. Storm gets knocked out, and then Mystique tells via Storm's communicator, like, hey, X-Men, you need to come down here. Which to me, if Storm said you have to come to the hospital immediately, I would get dressed up in my uniforms and then get in the X-plane and I would fly to the hospital. The X-Men instead get in the convertible and drive to the hospital. You've got a plane. Why are you driving anywhere?
Yeah. I have no idea if the idea was that they were going to, they thought that they would go to the hospital and like read a story to an old person or something. It's just like normal, like, you got to get down here. These people don't know the end of the very fretful pup or whatever.
It's like Johnny Depp keeping his Pirates of the Caribbean uniform and going to the children's hospital thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
But so we find out about this blonde lady who's Jane Doe. They don't know her name. She has no brain activity. So it's like, okay. The X-Men show up and the Brotherhood gets the drop on them as kind of to trap them. So there's a little bit more fight here.
Yeah. And this is just typical. Like, I think it's good. I think it's okay right here. Like, this fight scene is okay, but like literally everybody has a really dumb one-liner. Like, it's just some really bad like dialogue, which I come to expect and also love in this show. So
yeah, it's it does kind of undersell some of the stakes. It's like, why you're stopping to make these quips while your friend is presumably missing and very hurt and etc.
You've got a super powered teammate that's literally going crazy. You should probably not be worried about the funny
Stop
papers
her
right
before
now.
she kills.
Yeah.
Like,
and
she's going to see that blonde person on a human and punch them. And that's it.
She's literally busting up the hospital, Gary. She breaks open elevator doors. Yeah. She's crashing through walls. Like, she's in full on like crazed, like, I have got something, I'm going to hurt somebody mode.
Yeah. Pretty bonkers.
She finally finds the blonde woman in the hospital, this Jane Doe, and Mystique is there, and Mystique says, since Xavier's gone, I can finally have you back. I can finally restore your memories. All you have to do is touch me.
Yeah.
And Rogue doesn't know anything. She's like, what are you talking about? Excuse me. She's like, what are you talking about? She touches Mystique, and then we get a good flashback to our buddy Cody from the X-Men movie episode. Yes. Yep.
And from the first episode of this show.
That's true.
Where she's walking around and she's like, this is how my powers work. and just says it. So Cody was her first boyfriend. When she gets hurt, we find out that Rogue's dad is going to make America great again. I like that you on here. He's making America great again hat. And his huge beer gut, like a big strong beer gut, like he's a real wide guy.
Yeah.
And he's just
a real
like
tight t-shirt too, man. He's working it.
Yeah, and just it was like he's born in that t-shirt and it just grew up around him. And he's a real shithead. Like, he's just, I'm embarrassed to be around you. Like, you're disgusting. This is abuse. And Rogue is very upset. The voice acting here is touching and good. Mm-hmm. And she runs away and runs into Mystique, who kind of taught her how to use her powers in order to do crime. Like, Mystique took her in her kind of thing and was like, and then in the comics, this is Mystique, Destiny, and Rogue. Destiny does not show up here, who is Mystique's lover, because Mystique is bi. And teaches Rogue to do crimes in this specific sense, to steal a fighter jet. Here.
So I got a question for you. Like because I don't remember in the comics very well, but here it's kind of presented like Mystique showed her how to use these powers, and Rogue even says like, "You taught me how to use my powers for my ultimate job," and then they show her breaking into the presumably a military base to steal this fighter pilot. Like, do you think that Rogue realized she was a supervillain at this point, or do you think that she thought that all of these guys were pretty normal and like this was something that they were doing for the betterment of mankind?
I think that in canon, like she just was like, because she's pretty in her first appearance when she's, still kind of a shitbag. Like she's making quips and being kind of shitty. Okay. I think that she's just kind of, she genuinely reforms. I don't think she was fooled the entire time. So yeah.
So she gets into the fighter jet and like starts to take off when Miss Marvel shows up, and Miss Marvel pretty quickly dusts off the other Brotherhood people and then starts chasing Rogue in this jet. There's a scene here that I love it, and I love it so much. Miss Marvel flies up, opens the top of the fighter jet like it's a sardine can, comes in, and then just closes it right behind her like a sliding glass door.
Yeah.
It's so good.
That's really good.
So good, dude. It's so good.
So Rogue grabs her, does the thing, and she can't let go. Miss Marvel has some pretty intense magic powers. I don't actually have deep catalog on Miss Marvel.
Mm-hmm. She's like cosmic, right? Like she's like Kree and all this other stuff. Like, and
yes.
So she doesn't technically have like mutant powers, but she does. I think she does have some form of like native abilities. So whatever this cosmic force is, when Rogue interacts with it, it causes this weird mind meld, and it makes it permanent, which has never happened to Rogue before. Usually her powers only last either a few minutes or at the longest like a couple of days. But this makes it a permanent thing, and she. During this scene, she's saying, like, I want to let go, Mama. I want to let go, talking to Mystique. And Mystique is like, you can't. And then after this, Rogue says, you knew what this would do to me. Like, you knew that I would do this. Which is an interesting thing, because I don't know. I don't see Mystique's motivation here. Like, I just don't, unless it's just to kill Miss Marvel, I guess. That was
it's also, the Rogue gets these powers, and Mystique is using Rogue as like a tool. So it should be noted, we didn't really mention this, but this is back when Rogue only had her power draining powers. She couldn't fly. She wasn't invulnerable. She wasn't super strong.
Yeah.
So this is how that happens, is from Miss Marvel, for people who are not familiar with Miss Marvel. And that's what makes Rogue so effective. Like she's, other than Jean Grey and Storm, like the most powerful X-Men on the team.
So there's a scene where at the end of this fight, Miss Marvel takes off into the air and then falls on top of Rogue, but Rogue survives it because now she's got Miss Marvel's powers. They lift the mask off of Miss Marvel, and it's revealed to be the Jane Doe that we saw earlier. And there's this, pretty good wipe where they go from one to the other, from the past to the hospital bed. And at this point, Rogue runs away from Mystique, going back to our flashback. And this is where Xavier finds her and like hails her literally by saying mutant her head. Like a hello would work.
Shame. Also, her name.
Yeah.
She's presumably one of your best friends, if not one of your students or team, or however you want to put it.
Well, I got the idea that this was his first meeting. Like he found her on Cerebro, like a mutant in
trouble.
Oh
yeah, but he could read minds.
But he still would know her name.
Yeah, there's a little bit of the chronology. I got confused in the chronology, and just in case anybody else did as well, this is still in the flashback.
This is
her running away from Miss Marvel, not running away from Mystique. So that's why I got confused.
Sorry.
Here, so that Xavier finds her, and she says, I need to get I have this other mind in my head. I can't stop it, which is something that Xavier knows a lot about, right?
Sure.
And she's like, I need to forget what happened in order to heal myself. And Xavier does it because he has no ethics.
Well, this is Xavier's idea. This wasn't even her idea. Like he walks up to her, calls her a mutant twice, and says, I need to make you forget this so that you can be happy. Like, what a creepazoid this guy is.
It's incredibly unethical.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she probably wanted it. She's pretty upset, but it's still super shitty. Like, Xavier's really disgusting. So then Rogue comes back. She has the shape-shifting powers, and she's kind of, at this point, like, out for blood. She turns into Miss Marvel.
Back in the present time, too.
Yes.
Like, we're back in the hospital room.
Yeah. And the X-Men show up to be like, hey, we can help you, Cher. And she runs away because she can fly.
Yeah.
And she gets to do that.
She just keeps flying away. It's great.
Yep.
The X-Men can't really keep up with her flying, but Jean Grey is back at the X Mansion in Cerebro and like can reach out and catch up with her mind, and that's where this is where we go into the psychic plane, and we have this battle in the inside of Rogue's mind between Miss Marvel and Rogue, and the setup here, and this is why I mentioned that it was interesting earlier. Like this is Rogue's not the good person here, like regardless of whether she meant to do this or not, and I realize that she's protecting herself. Like she's still the wrong party. Like imprisoning a superhero in your mind, imprisoning anyone in your mind is a wrong act. Like continually doing it willingly and knowledgeably, like that's a wrong act. And
well, she didn't really continually do it knowledgeably. Like she had these memories blocked, so to her, like, she did it. She didn't know that she was going to touch Miss Marvel and not be able to let go. You can make the argument that she's kind of like, she was definitely villainous and it's a redemption, but she also was raised to be villainous after getting abused by her father. So like she's kind of a victim. The thing is like Miss Marvel's not the villain here at all, which is why I don't like that they gave her like zombie face.
Yeah,
like psychic Miss Marvel is like the soulless cinder. Like she's all fucking creeping out,
and she has a staff with sorcery for some reason. Not true. But Jean Grey is here too. Like Jean Grey is in this fight, and for some reason, Jean Grey appears as a giant woman. Like,
it's because of her power. Like she's not, she's a psychic. Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like making yourself a giant in somebody else's mind is like I don't know, man. The telepaths on the X-Men have no ethics or like responsibility.
It's an alpha
with
move.
Their stuff.
Yeah. I actually love that she shows up like to mediate this. And I think it is cool that she's like, this is a cool representation of psychic power as opposed to just energy beams.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
To me, like, I think this is actually pretty cool. And Jean Grey is like also realizes that Miss Marvel isn't the villain, but she can't just because Miss Marvel's plan, who has been, trapped in this like psychic plane for like 10 years at this point, probably.
Sure. Yeah.
And like has lost her life, lost her identity and stuff. Like it's profound act of violence is like, I'm going to take over and just drive your body, so like being John Malkovich shit.
Mm-hmm.
Jean's like, you can't do this. And Jean has to make this choice where it's like, one of you is the aggrieved party. One of you is my friend who's semi innocent,
Mm-hmm.
What do I do here?
And
Jean decides to tamp down Miss Marvel
and put her in a literal cage and then like seal it up so that she can't see out, which is it's
real dark.
Yeah, it's real dark. It kind of made me feel a little creepy, like made me feel a little gross. But again, like what is the best solution here? Like Xavier has said, and Xavier is probably the premier telepath in the world. Like if he says that he can't help her, like what are you gonna do? The only uplift at the end of this is that I guess after this is over with, Rogue and Mystique have like a big falling out where Mystique says, I raised you, and Rogue says, you didn't, and all this stuff like that goes on for a while. But then Rogue dresses up in civilian clothes and gets catcalled by Gambit because it's fucking Gambit. And then she goes to the hospital to visit Carol Danvers and leave her flowers. And that's when we see at the very end of the episode, Carol has a little bit of brain activity. So maybe something is happening there. Like maybe there's something that can be happening. And that's good. That's good stuff.
So yeah, it's Rogue doing her best. Mm-hmm. She can't fix it. And the only thing it needed to be like kind of morally right, I think, is the recognition that like somebody should be doing something to fix it. Xavier should have been like, I'll work on this, or something like that. Like we can get her mind back into her body. This is what happens in the comics. It's not like Rogue just absorbs Miss Marvel forever.
Yeah.
So that's what I would have appreciated, but it's okay that it didn't happen. And this ended up being a very good origin episode, like significantly better and more coherent than the Gambit one. Yeah. Which was nonsense. Like this is actually like a very cool episode, and like again, no winner, no good guys, no bad guys, morally complex, very good. Show kind of at its best.
Mm-hmm.
So
and
well done.
No happy endings. Like not every one of these has to end with everybody hugging and making the X symbol at each other or whatever. Like it's good stuff. Like these are 3 solid episodes, and I think a large portion of it is that they have nothing to do with the Savage Land.
We're
so happy that the Savage Land wasn't in these 3 episodes.
We're gonna get there. Don't you worry, buddy.
Do we have to? Can't we just cover Mojo Vision for like an hour and a half instead?
No. No, because you weren't good.
That's true. It's true. Let's get you want to get to the next episode?
Let's hit it up. XM 210, Beauty and the Beast. Original air date, January 15th, 1994. Beast falls in love with Carly. just so you know who that is, a blind patient of his. The two are kept apart by Carly's father, who looks down upon the mutant race. But when the Friends of Humanity, an anti-mutant organization, kidnaps Carly, her father turns to Beast, who must now risk his life to try to save her.
Again, just like totally incorrect in every single sentence. Sure, let's get into it.
And this is our Beast episode, not our origin episode.
Nope.
Like, not, this is not how Beast got his fur or whatever. This is just our Beast highlight episode.
Although we do
which,
get
to be fair,
some Beast like origin stuff in here. Like he goes and looks at like an old photo album, which I think is really fun.
Yeah. And to be fair, like Beast was not in the actual first season very much at all. So he was in
prison most of the time. So like
him having a highlight is a-okay, I think. Yeah.
I think it's fine that he has a highlight. I just Beast, like his like forlorn love or whatever, like this whole like love plot line, I just so eye roll inducing. Like I can't. I don't think I like this episode very much at all, and I think you may like it a lot more than I do, and I don't know why. I'm hoping you can sway me by the end of this conversation.
Yeah, I think this is actually kind of good. I think that the issue is, and what I agree with you is it's a huge cliche.
Yeah.
It is, it's literally called Beauty and the Beast. Which is like I get you. I get the story. I know.
You could have just put on the words Beauty and the Beast, showed a picture of Beast, showed a picture of Carly, and then like cut to the next episode, and I would feel like, yep,
kids,
I got it.
Imagine the rest. Buy your action figures and play this out yourself.
Directed by George R. Martin.
the Chase Carly toy. So Beast is at this eye clinic with Alec Bolson, who is a doctor, who is his buddy. Just beasting it up, sucking, taking forever to say words, and working to restore this woman named Carly's eyesight. And Beast is clearly in love with it. Like he's got thirst for days.
Yep.
Like his red thing is showing. Like it is. Beast
red
is
rocket. He's not red rocketing, is he?
He's red rocketing. Like it is. It's extremely bad.
Man.
And
oh god, if he does that every time he finds like a new science thing out, it's the worst.
Oh, my stars and garters.
No wonder he wears that trench coat everywhere.
And when he turns into a cat, he presumably gets cat genitals too, which is even like weirder. Like there's just a furry patch where nothing is. I never thought about Beast in terms of losing his genitals, but that's a real risk, right? Like when he turned into this form.
He had or worse, like if you end up with a cat penis and like you're never gonna.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like then you have your cat penis, which like cat, and then does he go through like hormone things, like because you want to, like, does Beast, like, does he spray something? Like, does he spray? Like, my apologies, as the bard would say, all's well that sprays well.
You think they had to neuter Beast?
Do you think they had to take his balls? Because otherwise they would be like out there on Front Street. Because cat balls are really unnerving. Like they're just like gigantic cotton balls that like are on the back of your cat before you get them fixed.
Do you think one of Jubilee's like many responsibilities besides cooking and everything is like basically just making sure that there's no cats in heat on the X Mansion grounds, like anywhere, because they just know Beast is gonna go ape shit?
I thought you were gonna ask if one of her duties was to cauterize Beast like weeping nutsack after the operation.
I thought that was obvious. I know that's definitely happening.
Does a mall rat like chili fries? Oh, my stars and garters.
Wow!
All right, I changed my mind. I like this episode a lot.
Okay, so Beast wants to bang down, and an explosion happens, and Beast manages to save Carly and not the regular human that's there. And the Friends of Humanity.
He saves Carly first, and then jumps back up to save the doc. I'll give him that credit, but this is the Friends of Humanity, and man, like back to Creed, where I am so just tired of Creed's voice. I'm so glad. I think this is the last time that we see Creed for quite some time, so I'm happy with this.
Yeah, mutants. They're mutants. Yeah, it's very obnoxious, but and also they're just blowing up hospitals because Beast works there. Like this is not going to win hearts and minds, guys.
Exactly. Yeah.
So Beast tries to talk him down because that's Beast's way. But they ain't dealing with it. Like, let's stuff it, college cat. Like,
he does his normal like poetry thing. Like he talks like Which just sounds like it makes you sound like an arrogant, condescending asshole. And like the Friends of Humanity are just like, okay, we're just going to shoot you. Like we're not even going to listen to this.
They're just like left coast elitist. You know, we're the real salt. We're real Americans. You're not. So we're not going to listen to you. You know. Anywho,
but they do a little fight thing, and then we go back to the mansion, and Wolverine is pissed.
That's a way I can sell you on this episode. Is Wolverine's plot line is great.
Yes, absolutely.
Like,
I guess,
Wolverine, because there's a whole B plot to this that's very good.
Yeah, and is this one of the first episodes where we actually have, besides like a Stinger Savage Land thing, that we actually have a full on B plot? Like, because it feels like this is the first time that they've really branched out into this, but I may be forgetting an episode.
I don't know if it's the first time, but it's definitely rare. So it's very cool, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's super mad and talking about like going to get revenge, and Jean Grey says, that plays right into what they want. Like if we're going to do this, we have to do this very carefully. We have to do this, we have to plan things out. And he basically says like, okay, that's fine, but the first time that I see one, I'm going to kill him. So
yeah, yep. So pretty cool. I like Wolverine in this episode.
Yep.
We do another Savage Land check-in, which we haven't had for a while. And Xavier and Magneto are captured in a net by Amphibious, who's a little tiny frog man.
He's talking like this. Like he's got this weird lisp going on the entire time.
This is when I think they first start talking about bringing him to the leader. At this point, realizing that's not Magneto. The Hydra, like you have it in the notes as the Darkroot Hydra, which I like.
It's got several heads.
Yeah, it's pretty much the Hydra. Back in ancient times, prehistoric time when there were Hydras.
Sure, absolutely.
But they get away.
Savage Land is so garbage.
It doesn't get better either. It's really stupid. Then we go to civilian Wolverine, who's doing his plan to infiltrate.
He's got a baseball
which,
cap on, covering up those hair ears of his. He's got like some red shades, a tight black shirt, blue jeans. Like I love this look.
I love Civvy Wolverine. It's so much better than Patch when he becomes like the weird like white suited guy with the eye patch who hangs out in Madripoor.
Yep.
Like, Madripoor is the Savage Land is another Savage Land in the comics. Like Madripoor is just as bad in the comics.
It's racist Savage Land is what you wanted to say there.
Savage Land is already pretty racist.
True. Also true.
Yeah, it's just like all these dumb savages. But he kind of hurts himself. He falls off of a fire escape, so they can show up, and then he blames it on a mutant. And it's pretty great. Like he's like, yeah, I was convinced by a mutant, and they're like, Creed is like, what happened? And he's, I told him to get out of town, and he tried to fight me, and I punched him, but he hit too hard or something like that. And he's just playing directly into Creed's hands. It's super good. Like I love smart Wolverine.
Yeah, anytime Wolverine like carefully manages his rage and like stealthy Wolverine is always really fun to me. So.
Yeah. We're gonna get to. I think that there's a cartoon adaptation in the Phoenix Saga thing of the very famous Wolverine infiltrating the Hellfire Club.
Yes,
I think that happens in the cartoon. Yeah, next season is when we get to the Phoenix Saga. So
I know
that's gonna be great. I'm super excited.
It's like there's like a 5-part. I don't know how we're gonna do an episode on that.
We'll split it in two episodes. Like it'll be a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
I think. Rather than doing all 5 episodes in one thing, because they do really jump around. Like it's the Phoenix Saga, but it's not a direct 1-to-1 translation. So
I haven't read ahead that far yet. Meanwhile, back at the eye clinic, this is the day of Carly's surgery, and Beast has come in, and Alec, the human doctor, is basically being like, hey, yo, you can't be here anymore. Like you caused this explosion, and like you're just like, our insurance rates are through the roof every time you step through the door.
The walls keep getting blown up. And this is Carly recognizes him at this point because of his clone, which comes up later.
Doesn't he say aftershave?
Or aftershave, yeah. Which he literally would be. I mean, I think that's kind of cute. Like he's putting on aftershave to seem human. Yeah. And then he's surprised. He thought that she wouldn't know that he was a mutant. And she's like, listen, buddy, I'm not a fucking moron. That guy came in and called you a mutant. I was like right here when somebody blew up the wall to tell me you were a mutant. And you were here as well. You dumb, condescending piece of shit. Like, why would you not know this?
Also, I'm blind, and that trench coat is horrible. Please don't wear that trench coat anymore.
I realize it's the only clothes that fit other than your underwear, but like, please.
Yeah, do something else. This depresses Beast. Beast goes into kind of a sad mode here. He's back at the mansion, and he's like sitting in the library, and he's like looking through old photo albums, which... Like whenever I have issues with a girl, like I don't go home and like look at my like elementary school pictures. Maybe I'm weird though, Gary. What do you do when you have issues with a girl?
No, but when I get depressed, I've definitely done some like flipping around on Facebook and looking at pictures of exes and shit.
Yeah, but not pictures of yourself at a younger state, right?
No, I guess that's true. Like I'm just like that was a happier time. It's pretty weird.
And I love this. I only took the one screenshot, and I may go back and take more. But there's one picture of him with Bobby like hanging out. There's pictures of him like doing acrobatic stuff, and I put this one in the show notes of him in like an actual human uniform, like he's wearing a human uniform, human clothes, like he's wearing a button-up shirt, pants, a belt. Why doesn't he wear that all the time? Like, why the trench coat?
Yeah, I don't. He seems like maybe he's a little bit smaller in that picture. Like maybe he's gotten more bestial. But he's also got a real dorky haircut during it too. It's a really good picture. Like this is a good find, Jeremy. Because we talked about before about how this show is kind of hard to just watch and pay your full attention to. Mm-hmm. I think. Yeah. So
when you're sitting down and you have a laptop in front of you and you're writing notes about exactly what happened in this dumb cartoon, like you start realizing you start having to pay attention a little bit.
You catch everything. Yeah. It's just this show. You know, even when I like it, it's very hard not to look at my phone.
Yes.
Part of that's my fault for being a dumb millennial, though. So Gene brings him lunch and he's now breaking down. He's crying. He breaks a mirror. You know, he's like, you know, I can't. Essentially, you know, I can't. The Spider-Man thing. Like, I can't put you in danger by loving you. Gene's like, you know, does she feel the same? And he's like, yes. And Gene's being a solid bro and just like, you know, maybe it's worth pursuing. Let her decide, that's solid advice in general.
Yep.
Like, never decide that somebody shouldn't be with you on your own. Like, you don't take away that agency from them. You know.
Agreed. Jean Grey actually, you know, holding it down right now.
Yeah. Good advice. Jean Grey. Yeah.
Beast leaves and goes back to the hospital, because he wants to see because in this world, like, you have surgery and then like later that day they unwrap you and you can see. So great, which is good. Maybe that's what Beast was doing, is speeding up this process. But he crashes it. He's not welcome there. But he walks in and you know, she gets to see him. But the dad shows up and is like, and this is the first time that we get to the dad, which like is prominently mentioned in the
intro.
Yeah.
And also this dad who's like straight out of Central Casting. like he does not look like a real person. He looks like an extra from Taxi Driver or something.
Yeah.
So the dad is just like, you know, get out of here. I don't want my daughter with a mutant. Mm-hmm. All pretty predictable. So Beast leaves, but then Carly's immediately kidnapped afterwards.
Just like they walk down a hallway. Beast is like, oh, I forgot to give Carly this present, like hand it back to her. And then, oh shit, you got to come back. She's kidnapped. Like, it's like 5 seconds. There's no time at all.
Yeah. Pretty amazing.
Yes.
You know, with his bestial hearing, he could not hear, you know, that this kidnapping was happening or anything like that with his super senses. Yeah. Pretty silly. So he's like,
fine, I guess.
Yeah, it's fine. He goes to the dad and he's like, hey, we both want the same thing. Like, let me help. I need your help to rescue your daughter. You want me to rescue your daughter. I want to rescue your daughter. Let's get this done.
Yeah. And then we flash back to the B plot where Wolverine is talking with Creed. And like you mentioned earlier, like all of this is good. And he's like describing him knocking the mutant out. And he's like that all of them should be punished. And then he kind of like clips that this dude is the last name Creed should be a signifier, but this is Sabretooth's son. Like he clicks on that pretty quick, which I think
he does a little trap. He's like, you know, you seem kind of familiar. You seem like a man I saw. He's like in the oil fields of Texas or something. And then Creed's like, that couldn't have been me. I grew up in Canada, and that's what Wolverine knew that.
And then he Canada. Looks at the camera and says, "Me too, bub."
Yeah, it's real like he's like you just got fucked. Like Wolverine is playing everybody like a fiddle in this, and he's kind of the all-star of this episode. It's pretty good, and he also is not like he could have just gone to a rage and popped claws right then, but he's like, no, it's more powerful to discredit this guy than to kill him. Like, he's just gonna be a martyr if I slice off his head. So pretty cool.
And not typical Wolverine behavior. Like when people, I think, bond with Wolverine the most, like you mentioned the scene in the Dark Tower where it raids the Hellfire Club, like that's his like rampage moment where he murders everybody. But it's stuff like this too, where they actually tap into some of his history. Like he's been alive for a long time and actually is pretty smart sometimes.
I certainly didn't mention it in the Dark Tower. Is the Dark Phoenix saga. So
sorry. Well, I mean,
no, it's okay. That
Wolverine
sounds like
was
I
in
was
the Dark Tower too. I don't know how far you've gotten.
Oh shit! I haven't read that far.
Crossover episode.
Bub. I wasn't too. I sounded like a dick correcting you, and I was being a dick. But my intention was whenever I do that, me and Cole have gotten to an understanding on this, but you and I have not been podcasting as long, is that you correct the other person to save them from a bunch of people calling them out on Twitter.
Yeah.
And correcting them. So you just like on the record, nope, we know Wolverine isn't in the Dark Tower. Save your tweets. Like, we get it.
So on the way, like Beast jumps in the car with the dad, which seems really weird to me, and then calls the X-Men and says, "Hey, we're going to the Friends of Humanity headquarters. Get over there." Wolverine calls in right after that. He's hiding in a closet and using his communicator to call in and saying like, "Hey, you guys need to come down here and also bring the portable Cerebro projector and a certain disc."
Yeah, I think that's so good. Like, why does it have to be related to Cerebro at all? It's just a projector.
It's literally just a projector.
Like, is that just a brand name in this universe?
Sure. You've got your Cerebro TVs. You got your Cerebro. Yeah. I've got my Sony. I've got my Cerebro PlayStation 4. Like,
it's pretty amazing. But there's a nice little callback because when Beast calls, he's like, "Hey, when Morph tricked you into going to the Friends of Humanity, where was it?" So this isn't the Friends of Humanity base that's under the mansion. This is their public-facing base that's at like the VFW.
Oh yeah, you think this is where the theater is, where they tried to execute Jubilee?
Yeah.
Like this is the movie shop or what? Movie Mart or whatever. Okay.
Because Beast specifically asked like, "Where did they take you?"
Gotcha.
Yeah. So you get there and Creed is interrogating Carly, which is like, fucking dick, like this poor blind girl, But it's the same kind of racist, the Klan hating people, white people who associate with blacks. Same kind of thing. Like the Friends of Humanity are just Klan fucking Nazis.
And what I don't get about this is like, what do they think Carly knows that they don't already know? They already know Beast. Like they've already tried to kill him several times. They've seen him on TV with the president. Like what information are you trying to get out of her? It's
super silly. Like that doesn't make any sense. But so the nice little, like, again, it's kind of thematically thing is Beast comes in here, and Beast, who is ordinarily our annoying roommate who won't shut up about literature, starts actually fucking shit up and fighting, and he's in a rage, and Wolverine is the one with the restraint. So I think that's the idea why those two characters are paired here, is to show the both sides of both of them, Yeah. Like this is almost as much of a Wolverine episode, because Wolverine finds Carly, so to escape, Creed shows up. Wolverine's like, "I'm a mutant," and Creed freaks out, and he's just like, "Yeah, listen, we know about your daddy," and then the portable Cerebro projector comes into play.
Yeah, and that's where they like the X-Men post up on a building next door. Cyclops shoots in the wall, and then they project Sabretooth in.
Very good plan.
Yeah, very, very, very classic X-Men. Destruction of property. Destruction of property. So yeah, this when the hologram. I wanted to say hologram Tupac right then so bad for some reason. Hologram Sabretooth shows up. And Creed starts freaking out because it's his dad, and his Friends of Humanity buddies are like, "Oh, you're related to a mutant. We're out. Like we're not gonna hang out with you anymore." And then he goes crazy screaming. And this is, I'm so glad it's the send off for this character because I can't handle this dude's voice anymore. It's horrifying. I don't like you. Like all that kind of crap.
He sounds like Axel.
Yeah,
exactly. He sounds like Axl Rose. Yeah,
but like spaghetti incident Axel, not like
it's a real
not
Chinese
appetite for destruction.
It's super like, how dumb are the Friends of Humanity that they couldn't understand that somebody who is the son of a mutant might hate mutants? Like it's not. I mean, I get that their idea is like, oh, you're impure or whatever bloodline because they're the Klan Nazis, but the idea that like it's just like, yeah, that's why I want to bring him down. You've seen him; he's Sabretooth. He was a literal monster. Like my dad was literally a werewolf all the time.
Yep.
Super, super ridiculous. Beast getting what he wants is the only thing worse than Beast not getting what he wants. So he's, and he's doing the, we can never be together thing, which is laying down real heavy.
Yeah. Like, you need to go do your thing. Like it's a very like 14-year-old boy way to break up with a girl of like, I don't deserve you. And you need to fly like a bird and all that other bullshit. And it's taking away her agency and just being super shitty. And the idea being like, oh, she'll be in danger. You live in a mansion full of turrets and shit. Like you can make her okay. Yeah. It's also, there's not a basis in like the comics. Like Beast has girlfriends. Yeah.
In the comics, so it's pretty weird. It's a weird option to take for it. And like the idea that he has to reject her, not because, and a more deft touch, a better writing version of this would be if, he's making up that as an excuse, but it's really because he's self-conscious about his beastfulness.
Sure. Yeah,
Beast
he's
feelings,
worried about his cat penis damaging her and
Yeah,
the physical expression of
once
his
this
love for her.
once this thing knots, I'm stuck for like several hours, and I haven't gotten it cleared for human consumption. So
What's this thing knots? Oh my god! The next novel by Chuck Tingle, right?
pounded in the butt by my own fear of my penis knotting inside my blind girlfriend. Um,
Yeah, I guess my problem with this episode to begin with, I think, is just mostly that Beast. Like, and I do like the change at the end where he kind of goes into a rage, but that's pretty much my only saving grace moment for him. Like, that's pretty much it. Like, the stuff with him and Carly feels. And I'm not expecting a children's cartoon from the early 90s to like build me up a relationship or anything. Like, it's just he likes this girl, like she likes him back, and then it's just all of this contrived stuff around it. And especially him at the end with the like I can't be with you kind of stuff. Just it's so eye rolling to me that I think that's what spoiled the episode. But you're right. Wolverine saves the episode, and especially the scene with Beast breaking in and going into a rage is really, really good.
Yeah, it's not quite a redemption for Beast because he's still like just kind of annoying to be around, but it's close to, and it's top notch. It's some of my favorite Wolverine. Like comparing this Wolverine with Alaska Wolverine, it's just amazing. It's like this is such a better like expression of that character because he's been a lot like he's not an idiot. And just making him like just a rage monster is kind of silly at this point.
Mm-hmm. But this is good, and this is. I would say these are 3.5 good episodes, like which is a pretty good ratio for X-Men, the animated series.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to pretty much do us for today, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is so thanks for sticking with us. It's a little bit longer episode, but it's a weird season. We'll probably stick closer to like 3 episodes per episode next season when we have more episodes to work with. That's the word episode a whole lot.
I was really hoping we'd go to 6 episodes. Like we,
geez, yeah. The
5-hour podcast.
Since well, man, like I mean, I had that week where it's like 3 5-hour recording sessions for various things. I'm not trying to whine. Like this is a very good. Like the fact that I get paid for this is awesome, and this is a very good job. But it is, just talking that long can be very very difficult. Like, but no, I'm not complaining about this. This has been great. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back with the finale of the season next episode, and stay tuned at the end of the next episode because we have a very special poll about what movie we're going to do.
Yep.
At that point, and if you like the show, you can rate and review it on iTunes. That's very helpful. Please do so. Tell people.
Yeah, and you can also go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. Because of the patrons over there, this show got funded, and we were able to do this show, which is really exciting. So if you like this show and the other shows on the Duckfeed Network, a couple of bucks a month can really, really help out to making more shows. The tiers are all awesome. Like I'm so excited about all of the new shows that are going to be coming out as they reach these goals. Like the REM show is funded, the Dark Tower show just got funded. Like everything is just gold coming out of Duckfeed nowadays. So definitely go check that out. And if there's some shows that interest you, chuck a couple of bucks their way.
Yeah, I think it'll be really fun. And these shows that are not our normal video game shows, like we're doing that kind of indie cinema model where we're doing, we do the big shows, which we love doing them. So it's not really like that, but we do, our big video game shows that get all the listeners and everything. So we can do these smaller ones, kind of like we're not expecting any of our smaller shows have not, touch the big 3, but we really love doing them, and we know that people listen to them. We know they have fans, and people will say things like, "Oh, like Days of Future Cast is my favorite show on the network." I think that's very sweet. Yep. So please please spread the word. Like if you patronize us already, that's fantastic. But also see if you can get other people to check it out because word of mouth is a really trustworthy way for a podcast to spread.
Do you have a really hard time saying patronize us? Because every time I hear it, it sounds weird. I know that's the correct verb. It just sounds really awkward.
I've got to, because I've done it so many times. Like if I start talking about Patreon, it's all, I can get through that. Gotcha. I go crazy when people call it Patreon or Patron or talk about having Patreons or something like that. Like that drives me nuts. Like I love Retronauts, but Jeremy Parrish will say we'll call it Patreon sometimes. I'm like,
that's not the way that word works.
Yeah,
no offense, Jeremy Parrish. I don't know if it's a joke.
I mean, you could say like patronize. So I get why he does it that way, but I don't know what it just drives me crazy for some reason. And then Lou Reed's the Internet will talk about having Patreons or call the website Patron. Patron.
Patron. They call
Money
him
slide by one,
Patron.
Patron.
You put in quarters and podcasts come
Ding,
out.
ding, 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 ding. So it's yeah. Anywho, thank you very much, and until next time, good night.
Good night.
I'm gonna go take a whiz.
Do it. I rewatched the last two just now to make notes, and Jesus Christ, Savage Land. I hope we never have to go back.
We will.
Shut up,
Like
Jerry.
I'm pretty sure we do. We go way back to I did a thing where I looked at episodes that were coming later. Like I just have the folder where I torrented all of them, and I just like double clicked on a couple of them randomly on the titles, like old ones that I didn't know, just to see what was up with them. And it's pretty amazing. We got some amazing shit coming up when it gets into like real deep 90s lore. And when Mr. Sinister comes back for like another wedding,
Great.
we get to see him like wearing a tuxedo and stuff.
What,
Pretty good. They don't go to the Savage Land, but
Who do you think Mr. Sinister's tailor is? Like, do you think he just goes to like the prom rent a shop, or like where
it's a costume prop department.
yeah, 100%.
Like he goes to like a local community theater